Hello, everyone. This is Howard Gearhauser. On the line, you have my dad, Dr. Richard Gearhauser. In today's episode, we are going to go through 10 cutting-edge ways that you can optimize your health and your energy. So these are kind of our 10 best protocols. So let's jump right into them. The first one is watch the morning sunrise. Can you explain why watching the sunrise on a consistent basis is critical for optimal health?
Right. Well, the morning sunrise, I mean, if you think of ancient humans, that morning sunrise was an exciting event because they didn't have artificial lights. And so all kinds of ancient cultures, thought of the sun as a god, and they faced the east in the morning. So our modern world, where we have the electric lights and everything lit up, I think it's lost its edge. And then we have our televisions and everything we do at night. We've become night creatures more than day creatures, but we're designed for our health to be day creatures, and you can't really change that. You might be able to change that with the evolutionary process, but that's going to take tens of thousands of years, and we've only been dealing with the fake lights since the late 1800s, and they really proliferated after that. So that is a problem because we know from science that the morning light in our eyes causes the release of our hormones. Wow. Another thing, so hormones really critical. I mean, think about testosterone, estrogen, thyroid hormone, all these hormones, growth hormone, are all stimulated by the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland is stimulated by that bright blue light that's in sunlight. Okay, the other thing that the sun does is it sets our circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm orchestrates all the complex molecular transformations that are happening in us 100,000 times per second in every cell, and we have 37 trillion cells. So guess what? We need that sun to set our circadian rhythm every day. This is not speculation. The Nobel Prize in medicine in 2017 was awarded to the mechanism of the circadian rhythm. So it all starts with light setting the clocks. So that is a key. If you don't do this, with our health coaching clients, this is something that we try to make in their life non-negotiable, but just try it. I think you'll see what it does for you.
And before we get to number two, if you can't visibly see the sunrise, like let's say it's cloudy outside, still go outside because a lot of the frequencies still penetrate through the clouds. So regardless of whether it's cloudy or sunny, make sure that you're adding the sunrise to your daily routine. Try and do it as much as you can. This, like my dad just mentioned, is a non-negotiable for our health coaching clients. All right, moving right along, let's go to number two, which is block artificial light at night. What does that mean?
Okay, artificial light at night, in science now they're calling it ALAN or ALAN, ALAN. And so artificial light at night is a big problem because it has a lot of blue light in it, kind of like the sun has, but the spectrum of frequency in the sun is all the colors of light, whereas our artificial light, especially our LEDs and compact fluorescent lights, have a spike in the blue, and the LEDs have very little in the red. So we're designed to have the full spectrum. And if we have artificial light at night with the spike in blue, one thing is it messes up our circadian rhythm because it's setting your orchestration of all those molecular transformations. It's setting them to noon when it's 9 o'clock at night. And that is not good. It creates chaos in the body. Now, what living systems have been able to do is to create order out of chaos. So if you get more chaos, you start having health problems. And so this can be the root of many health conditions. I'm not going to mention them, but it's all of the degenerative diseases that right now are exploding. And right now, mainstream medicine has a lot of treatments, but almost none of them cure any of these diseases. Now, the research in this field is just now getting underway, but there are new articles coming out every month showing that artificial light at night is correlated to obesity and diabetes and to cancer risk. And we're finding that artificial light at night tends to damage our retina. It may be related to age-related macular degeneration. So there's all kinds of effects of the artificial light. If you look at a satellite picture of the Earth at night, it's incredible. We've destroyed the dark, but we need the dark. Now, the light at night that we did have, through our history is fire. So humans, they figure humans started using fire about 800,000 years ago. So fire is okay. In fact, I think it's beneficial because it has a very powerful infrared light, which has health effects. So fire is okay. So that means candles or some type of artificial light that duplicates candlelight. Now, believe it or not, you can still read with these, but our screens, big source of artificial light, whether it's your television, your computer monitor, your cell phone, your iPad, whatever it is, you need to block that from your eyes because the artificial light at night definitely destroys melatonin. Without melatonin, you cannot be healthy. Without melatonin, you don't sleep well. Without melatonin, you lose one of your major antioxidants in your body. Without melatonin, you don't repair the damage. So every day we go through life, we damage some molecules and cell structures, and their repair is orchestrated by melatonin. And we destroy melatonin within a couple of minutes of blue light exposure. Now, the big effect is in our eyes, but it also affects our skin. So we have our health coaching clients cover up more when you're in fake light, uncover when you're out in Mother Nature's sun. But if you're indoors, cover up more, wear the long sleeves like the dermatologists tell you to do in the sunlight. Well, you do just the opposite. You go strap-ass bare naked during the day, and you put on some clothes at night, and you especially cover your eyes with blue blocking glasses. Now, these blue blocking glasses, you don't want the clear ones that all the big lens manufacturers are making. It takes a lens that is orange in color to adequately block the blue and also part of the green, because those spectrums need to be blocked if you want to keep your melatonin up and if you want to not stimulate your clock mechanism at the wrong time of day, which is like shooting yourself in the foot and then shooting yourself in the head. So I tell everybody, any health condition can be aggravated by blue light at night.
So again, cutting edge way number 2, make sure you're blocking the blue light at night. Cover up, wear the blue blocking glasses. There's also blue blocking filters that you can put on TV screens and whatnot, and also applications that you can download on your smartphone and on your computer. So make sure you're blocking the blue light at night. Now, cutting edge way number 3 to make sure you're optimizing your health is to mitigate your non-native electromagnetic field exposure, which is abbreviated non-native EMF. Why are non-native EMFs harmful, and what can we do about it?
Okay, we are in a big soup of non-native electromagnetic fields. This is just exploding. It's everything from, television broadcast towers, radio broadcast towers, our power grid, and then all of our tech devices and wireless stuff. So we're being bombarded. The problems with these waves, now we've always been, as humans in our ancient history, we've always been bombarded with electromagnetic fields, but they came from things in nature. So they were always there for all of life. One is the frequency that the sun puts out. And so that's the visible and non-visible light, the infrared, the ultraviolet, and the visible spectrum. And then the electromagnetic field of the planet Earth. It's called the Schumann's resonance, and that comes about from the molten core of the Earth moving, puts out a magnetic field, and then the sun hitting our ionosphere. These together put out the Schumann's resonance. So we have the Schumann's resonance in the sun's radiation, and most of the cosmic radiation gets blocked by the atmosphere. the dangerous things like X-rays and things that are out there, we are protected by the atmosphere, but the ultraviolet light comes through. But all these sources of natural light are not pulsed waves. And so the artificial electromagnetic fields, like I say, they come from all kinds of our modern stuff. And so this all started basically in the late 1800s when we started developing the electric power grid and electric lighting, and then it went to the technology and the wireless and the radar and the television and radio. So all these things are now bombarding us. The problem with man-made is that the waves are pulsed. So they're not pulsed with the natural waves, they are pulsed with the artificial waves. Now you say, oh, well, big deal. Well, this gets to be complicated, physics and science, but basically what happens when it's pulsed is that it interacts more with the positive and negative ions. And so this creates what we call in science biologic effects. Now you may hear like a government official for the Federal Communications Commission saying, oh, there's no sign that this isn't safe at the levels we allow it. So you'll hear the government officials, well, and then you'll hear the industry paid scientists say, well, we did this study and it was equivocal or it proved that it's safe. But if you look at the research in the field, there's thousands of studies showing biologic effects, and they're almost never good. So there's thousands of studies. Why can't you believe those government officials? Well, if you think about the government needs tech to survive because they sell the different spectrums of frequencies to the tech companies, and these are big, big dollars at stake. Okay, and then usually the head of the FCC was in the tech industry, and so they moved over there. They scratch each other's back. So the government would lose so much money if everyone thought this was dangerous and didn't allow it, or it was all taken down. So you can't believe the government officials, and of course you're not going to believe the scientists that are paid to do their research by these same tech companies, because you can design an experiment to get the results you want if you have something at stake. In other words, your salary's at stake because the tech company is paying for this. So that's why when tech companies fund the research, about 2/3 of the time, it says it's safe or that it's equivocal and we need to do more studies. And it's just about flip to the other way around, that 2/3 show a biologic effect when independent scientists do it. So I'm not going to go any more into the details of the science, but this is real. The government funded a big study that showed that this causes cancer. This was in rats, but we're very similar to a rat in a lot of our physiology. There are links to so many different conditions, including autism, damage to DNA, increased inflammation, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, you name it, especially mental disorders. So this is real. Now, I'm not a believer in being an ostrich and hiding your head in the sand, but I'm also not a believer to live your life in fear. Do you have to fear this or go, oh, it's hopeless or whatever? No. By spreading the word like I'm doing right now, we could end this in one day. Change the laws, shield it, make it safer. This could happen in one day. All we need to do is wake up enough people so we can be encouraged. But don't be an ostrich and stick your head in the sand. Do some simple mitigation strategies. Don't just blindly let your body be exposed to these abnormal waves that potentially could harm you.
And in terms of some of those strategies, a few are turn your Wi-Fi off at night, hardwire more of your computers and whatnot. The hardwires don't have those non-native EMFs. When you're asleep, mind your sleep environment. Turn your phone off or put it on airplane mode. Don't have it right next to your bed. One thing that my dad did is he has a circuit breaker that can actually turn off all of the electricity within the house that's in his bedroom. That's an option too. That's a little more extreme. If you're someone who's hypersensitive to EMF, you may want to see an EMF expert and have them come out to your home and measure the various frequencies. That's something that my dad did as well, because you might be bombarded by a cell tower or a power line or something that maybe you're not aware of. So that's another good technique too. So mind your non-native EMF exposure, but also don't get too hung up on it. Don't start living in complete fear, because then that makes the problem worse from our experience. Okay, so now moving on to way number 4, we want to get electrically connected to the earth through grounding, also called earthing. So Dad, can you explain a little bit more about grounding and its health benefits?
So grounding or earthing is basically connecting to the earth. The earth has a negative charge on the surface. And so if you're connected to the surface through a conducting material like the dirt or grass or sand or stones or even concrete with bare feet, you can't have the plastic synthetic shoes on or they will block the conduction. This allows the electrons from the surface of the earth to come up into the body. They're anti-inflammatory. Going barefoot has other things. There's effects on your nervous system called piezoelectric effects. And what that means is when you squeeze a nerve, it sends an electrical signal. So by going barefoot, you increase the function and structure of your feet. So going barefoot has not only this grounding benefit, which affects all diseases, because most diseases have an inflammatory basis. So by going barefoot, theoretically, you can mitigate your risk, or if you already have the disease, help that just by grounding. So I recommend 20 to 40 minutes of grounding every single day. A damp surface conducts a little better. If you say you're diabetic and you can't risk cutting your foot or stepping on a sticker, there are grounding straps, and these are used in the tech industry for the workers that want to get rid of their static electricity. It's a little strap that fits on the bottom of your shoe. You could buy those. They contact with your skin and allow you to ground even though you're wearing the synthetic shoes. You can also wear leather shoes. Leather shoes with our sweat in our feet kind of makes the leather damp, and then that damp leather conducts well. And that's why the ancient humans, when they put leather, moccasins on their feet, they were still in contact with the earth. So think of an ancient human in contact most of the time, but they did have the ability to disconnect, like as opposed to a tree, which does not have the ability to disconnect. So trees need this grounding just as much as we do. We have the ability to disconnect for periods of time. And that's why we haven't all died. Once they put out the non-conducting shoes back in the 1950s, and now the athletic shoe market is just taken off. I mean, everybody wears these shoes, or if you wear, plastic flip-flops or whatever you're wearing, almost all the shoe materials do not conduct. Now, there are some grounding sandals out there too, so there's a lot of different creative ways to deal with this. Once you start, it becomes addictive because you feel that extra energy, the release of that inflammation, the release of that stress on your system. So it's something that over time you begin to love, and you go, wow, it's too bad, the humans that are addicted to wearing their shoes and addicted to that total comfort of every step is cushioned. You wonder how you ever got down that rabbit hole. Not good.
And another benefit of walking barefoot is you get a free reflexology treatment. So the way your whole body works when you're barefoot, and as my dad mentioned, you're not just walking on a smooth, comfortable surface. Your muscles work a lot differently. And you'll actually find that, wow, human beings aren't designed to just walk on this flat surface, that there's a lot more to it. So start walking barefoot, start on the beach. That's what I like to do. And that's not going to hurt. As you get more advanced, you can be like my dad and walk on Arizona desert trails and step on cacti and all of that. So don't do that right away. All right, moving on to number 5. Get in the present moment and become an observer of your thoughts. Why is this important, and what exactly does that mean?
Okay, well, us human beings, and I think especially the modern human being, where as opposed to the hunter-gatherer, we don't have life-threatening situations around us ever, or rarely, but we're stressed out way more than the ancient human. So what happened is we start getting stressed from our indoor living and our crowding. We're stressed about our job. We're stressed about traffic. We're stressed about all the human interaction things that come about. And we're commonly living in the past. So we're living in the past, you know, dwelling on something that we regret, or dwelling on something that happened to us a long time ago. And when we picture that in our mind and over and over and over, this becomes wired in our brain and it becomes subconscious. So we don't even know it's happening. But what it does is triggers an emotional response, which is fear, and fear triggers, or anger. All these trigger the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight nervous system. So what many studies have shown is the average person in a Western culture is very stressed out. They have their sympathetic nervous system on overdrive, and then they have the parasympathetic, which is the balancing part of the autonomic nervous system. The parasympathetic part of the nervous system is underactive. And parasympathetic is required for repairing our body. So we never repair our body. And so we have the stress hormones going, and we don't have the recovery hormones going. And a big one I talked about earlier is melatonin. So we have too much stress and not enough recovery, which leads to chronic disease. So what's an easy way, and maybe not so easy, but what is an easy way to identify those things that we're thinking about? Well, one is meditation, where you get into the present moment. So you focus on your breathing. Just focusing on your breathing puts you into the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, at first, you're going to have a lot of thoughts come into your mind, and you don't try to fight that. You just let the thought come, but you go direct yourself back to your breathing. And what you can eventually do is not have those thoughts coming in. Or if they do come in, you can learn to just let them pass. So you sit in the present moment. Now, another part of stress is predicting something terrible in the future. Like, we commonly, if something's going on in our lives, like a stressful thing that's in our lives, we often ruminate about the worst possible outcome of that stress or that negative thing in your life. And so it's more likely to happen because the bad outcome's more likely to happen because that's what you're focusing on. So you're focusing on the worst possible outcome. Well, that's not good either. What is better is to focus on what you want in life as far as your future, and catch yourself, become an observer of your thoughts. So as you practice this, as you practice getting in the present moment with your breathing, using your breathing as a way to keep bringing you back, a thought passes by, but keep bringing you back, then you can start to observe your thoughts. And once you start observing your thoughts, you become better and better at it. Till pretty soon you could say, oh, wow, here comes that negative thing about the past. Go back into the present moment. Do your breathing. Come back into the present moment. So I believe this is a huge factor, and studies back it up, that stress is a huge factor for almost every disease out there. So present moment is kind of the first thing, and then identifying your thoughts, being the observer of your thoughts, and then you can change them. You can change your thoughts. You can focus on something positive, something that you want, instead of the worst case scenario.
Exactly. So getting in the present moment, which is done through breath, which we're going to touch a little bit more on breath and how that relates to brain activity in just a second. But getting in the present moment is a very effective way to rid yourself of anxiety and depression. So anxiety stems from dwelling, or excuse me, projecting about things that might happen in the future. And then depression is dwelling on things that happened in the past. So by getting present, where you're no longer dwelling or projecting, it's really difficult for depression and anxiety to live in the present moment. So there's a lot of techniques and strategies for doing that. And go look up some meditation techniques. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube and online that can help you out with that. So moving on to number 6 is optimizing your breathing. So breath work and learning to harmonize your brain and your heart and getting your brain waves to a much slower state is a great way to reduce stress. Can you touch on that a little bit more?
Yes, well, again, when you focus on your breathing, studies show that we automatically will start going into uh, the slower brain waves. Okay, I mentioned the Schumann resonance, which is the frequency, the EMF frequency of the planet. Okay, one of our relaxations and alertness levels of brain waves is the same alpha level. You think that's a coincidence that we have as our kind of relaxation and focused wavelength is the same as the Earth's wavelength? So we want to be in that way more often. But if you're doing this rapid breathing, so breathing, recent studies have shown that breathing has increased over the years. They look back like into the 1950s or prior to that, that we didn't have as many repetitions per minute of our breath back then as we do now. So there's now a new normal for how many respirations we do per minute. So one of the things we like to teach is to slow that down. Now, some of the benefits of slowing down your respiration, besides activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which helps you recover and helps you stay healthy and keeps you more balanced. So the sympathetic and parasympathetic are balanced because the sympathetic is way higher in most of us because most of us are stressed out. So the other advantage of breathing slower is it actually increases the oxygen delivery to our tissues. So why is oxygen important? Well, oxygen is what is called the terminal electron acceptor across our little engines inside our cells that create our energy. So we create this energy where electrons move to oxygen. And what happens when you breathe too fast is you blow off carbon dioxide. Now, we all think of carbon dioxide as something bad, but carbon dioxide is actually supposed to be at a certain level for oxygen to release from hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in our blood. So hemoglobin, which is red, it's in our red blood cells, carries oxygen to our mitochondria, and that oxygen then accepts that electron and it becomes water. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that water in just a minute. But doing that then gives you more energy by breathing slower. Why? Because when you have a higher level of carbon dioxide, the oxygen releases from hemoglobin. If you're breathing too fast and your CO2 is low, then it doesn't release. So this is basic science that they teach you in the first year of medical school or the first year of biochemistry. So this isn't speculative. You have to have a certain level of CO2 or the oxygen doesn't release well. So because the whole population on average is breathing way too fast, this is an epidemic. So just slowing down your breathing can improve your health so much in these two main mechanisms that I just described.
So start practicing that right away. Start slowing down your breathing. Be more aware of how fast you're breathing. Oftentimes we go through our entire day and realize, wow, we haven't even focused on our breathing. We're just doing it subconsciously. And because we're breathing more and more, faster breath normally indicates more stress, a more stressful situation. Slower breath means I'm not being attacked. I can relax, I can restore with a slower breath. So start practicing that. So the next technique, which is really cutting edge and really important, is to lower your deuterium levels through a deuterium depleted diet and by drinking deuterium depleted water. So deuterium acts like a sludge that builds up inside the little engines inside of our cells called the mitochondria. So this sludge builds up and it breaks our little engines, which create all of the energy for our cell to operate. Can you touch a little bit more on deuterium and how we can go about depleting the deuterium within our cells?
All right, so I'll go back to the last section where I mentioned that oxygen takes that electron and basically our mitochondria, as it's burning energy, as it creates energy for our body to use, the byproduct of that is water. Well, this water that the mitochondria makes has a special property. So there's the water, as you know, is H2O, two hydrogens and one oxygen. Well, the hydrogens come in flavors, and these are called isotopes. So one is deuterium, which is more rare. There isn't as much deuterium. And the other is the light hydrogen, or it's also termed protium. So you have deuterium and protium. The water that the mitochondria makes is extremely depleted in the heavy isotope deuterium. So heavy isotope just means it has an extra neutron, which doubles its mass. So that makes it act differently in all chemical reactions. Well, inside the mitochondrial membrane, inside that matrix, you must have this deuterium depleted water. Well, with diseases like doing way too much of the wrong stuff, like all the other categories I talked about, will damage your mitochondria. When your damaged mitochondria function or malfunction, then they don't make the deuterium depleted water. The only hydrogen that works to make energy, it goes through this special molecule to make energy, this hydrogen does, if it's deuterium, it gets stuck. So this has been shown scientifically. This protein that spins with hydrogen going through it needs the light hydrogen. And so if we have too many exposures, or if we're just getting old, this happens to everybody. It's why we die. It's why we don't live forever, is this process. We start building up this sludge or deuterium in our cells. So there's a couple things we can do. One is we can buy some expensive water that's depleted in deuterium, and we recommend that for our cancer patients, or maybe somebody who is really struggling with severe chronic fatigue or something. But the other way to do it, and the ancient humans didn't need to do that as much, because the way you take care of your mitochondria are doing all the things that we've already mentioned. That's what takes care of your mitochondria. But if you haven't been, because you live in our present world where everything's kind of bass-ackwards, well, then there's a good chance you need to lower your deuterium to kind of jumpstart your mitochondrial function. So one of the ways is through diet. What is deuterium depleted out in nature as far as something that we would eat? Well, it's mainly fats, but these have to be natural fats. They can't be the man-made or the man-processed fats. So you want to get minimally processed plant fats, and animal fats are the key, because they're low in deuterium, because every life form has to compartmentalize deuterium. Deuterium is relatively high in our blood, but it's very low in the mitochondrial matrix for a deep reason. And when it gets high in the mitochondrial matrix, our engines start to sputter, and then we start to sputter. And we get depressed. We start getting diseases we don't want. We have to visit the doctor, and he's going to recommend all these drugs that don't deal with the root cause of why this is happening.
So again, the deuterium depleted water is a great thing to do if you're dealing with a serious health condition or chronic fatigue. You can also make your own deuterium depleted water. Go YouTube how to do that. It's not as potent, I guess you could say, as purchasing the expensive water, but it's another thing that could help. In the deuterium depleted diet, eating those healthy fats, cutting out the refined carbohydrates in processed foods, which we'll touch on in just a second, is a great way to keep your deuterium levels low. But you have to make sure you're doing all of the other things too, as my dad mentioned. That's what keeps your mitochondria healthy. And if they're healthy, it's really difficult for deuterium to build up. So let's move on to method number 8, which is to lower your toxic burden. So what are the toxins that are plaguing our health?
Okay, well, that would take a 2-hour video to adequately deal with that. But just to kind of scratch the surface of the big ones that I would watch out for, one of the biggest ones is just our food supply. So our food supply is inundated with glyphosate. You may have heard of glyphosate, which is the ingredient in Roundup. That's the weed killer. So this is pervasive in processed food because almost all, it's in cotton, corn, many of our vegetables, glyphosate, fruits, glyphosate is used to keep the weeds down. And so you may have heard of the big lawsuits because glyphosate has been connected to blood cancers. And glyphosate mimics one of our amino acids, a really important amino acid, glycine. So it looks like glycine to our cells and our molecules. And so glyphosate inserts itself into molecules and it doesn't act like glycine. So it messes things up from multiple places. Now there's another big group of chemicals, and these are the endocrine disruptors, and these are everywhere. The endocrine disruptors, they're in the plastics. You know, if you think about it, you go to the store, everything is in plastic these days. I mean, it's just really hard to avoid plastic. You know, they have worse plastics and better plastics, but I would, you know, educate yourself on, you know, what's the worst plastics and avoid those. And then also try to avoid plastic. For the sake of the earth and for your own health, I would try to avoid plastics. Some of the major companies out there now have pledged that they're going to reduce this plastics burden. And as I say, endocrine disruptors, you know, we've had all kinds of changes. You know, girls are starting to have their menstrual cycles like 2 years sooner than they used to. It's thought to be related to these endocrine disruptors. Now, another one that I think is real important is all of these things that cause a fabric or even a metal surface to repel moisture or non-stick. So all the non-stick pans, you gotta get rid of those. Teflon was banned. You may have seen that recent video, Dark Waters. That's a very good video to look at. Hey, why did they ban Teflon? And then why are all the other non-stick surfaces variations of that same chemical? So even though they're not banned because 30 years hasn't passed, like with Teflon, to find out how many people it's killed. So we don't want these non-stick pans. That's a big thing because we eat every day and hopefully you're cooking a lot. So you don't want to be cooking. Use ceramic, use cast iron. You can oil treat your cast iron so that it doesn't stick. So yeah, it's a little more work. You have to look it up online how to do it, but it's way better. Yeah, and you're not getting these toxic fluorocarbons. So they have fluoride in the molecule. Fluoride is anti-life. So another thing I'd say is don't drink fluoridated water. About half the cities in the United States pour fluoride into their tap water because they have this misguided belief that it's good for your teeth. Well, it's not good for anything. There's lower IQ with kids that drink fluoridated water. Fluoride damages your ability to produce energy. Now, getting back to those PUFOAs that are in the nonstick pans, those similar molecules are in all of the repellent things that they put on fabrics. So all of your rain jackets, you buy a Gore-Tex rain jacket, it's got a derivative of the same toxin in it. Almost any of the waterproof clothing, waterproof car seat, the sprays you get to waterproof your car seat, bad news. These do also disrupt your hormones, but they do other things as well. They increase your risk of cancer. When they're sprayed on there, you breathe them in, so you don't even have to touch it to be effective. They put it in carpets, stain-resistant carpet. You don't want stain-resistant. A stain is better than having a toxic chemical that impairs your mitochondrial function, so you'll feel worse. You won't have the optimal life that you want to have. So again, I wouldn't be paranoid about this, but be smart, because one thing that we do is we vote with our dollars. So if we won't buy the stuff that's bad, companies are going to come in and make stuff that is better. So we can all work together, spread the word about this stuff to get non-toxic products out there. Give us another choice.
Exactly. And if you're looking for more information on these toxic exposures, go do a quick YouTube or Google search. There's a lot of great information out there. Also, with our health coaching clients, this is something we work out with them kind of case by case, because everyone's different. Everyone has different exposures. But if you're one of those people who likes to do the research and likes to put in the effort and is passionate about it, just go do your homework. Go look those things up and start making the modifications. All right, so let's move on to the next recommendation. And this is kind of a blanket recommendation that kind of relates to recommendation number 1, but this is to increase your sun exposure. So currently we're indoors 95% of the time, and it's our belief that the sun is really important for optimal health. Can you explain what the sun does and what the benefits of more sun exposure will do for your health and your energy?
Sure. Okay, I am giving you a good example of what may be needed for you. Okay, I've set up my office outside in the sun. Okay, now the reason I do this is the more impaired you are, the more sun you need. The sun builds that charge separation in our mitochondria so that the electrons can flow and the hydrogens can be pushed through that protein that makes our energy. So this is how we make energy indirectly from the sunlight, just kind of like a plant does. So only a plant does it through chlorophyll. We do it through other mechanisms, including melanin. That's the pigment in our skin that makes us tan. And then also through our hemoglobin, which absorbs sunlight. So the thing about the sun is that the frequencies change as we go through our day. So mid-morning sun or earlier morning sun, like let's say 8 or 9 o'clock, UV light starts to penetrate. UVA goes in our eye and makes neurotransmitters. Now, I'm not going to go into the mechanism, but it's from that light. It's called photoactivation of those precursor amino acids, photoactivation. Then we build dopamine. Dopamine makes us happy. It gives us pleasure. It makes us smart. It makes us goal-oriented. So the sunlight triggers the dopamine in our eye, that UVA light that comes out mid-morning. And then UVB light triggers the formation of vitamin D. Vitamin D is critically important for to prevent many diseases. There's so many diseases correlated with people having low vitamin D, and yet the multiple clinical trials of taking a pill, a vitamin D pill, don't really mitigate those diseases. So it's not the D pill that's going to fix you. It's a complicated process of how the sun activates the precursor molecules of vitamin D to form vitamin D. This form of vitamin D is special in that it's made by sunlight, and the artificial vitamin D isn't. So we know from the clinical trials, artificial D doesn't work, and the D made from the sun does work. Again, then as the day goes on, then the B goes away again. The A then later goes away, and then at sunset, there's powerful red and blue. So you want to see that sunrise. Remember, that's non-negotiable. Sunset is more optional, but it's still good, because what happens as the sun goes down below the horizon, that as it goes lower, the blue gets stronger and stronger, and the blue gets extremely strong because of reflection right before the sun goes down. Then it goes to 0, okay, once the sun sets. So that's what humans have done for millions of years. Is that they get that high blue and then dark. Okay, so we want to do that if we can. It's not as important as getting our hormones fired in the morning, but it's important. So what do we want? We want frequent sun breaks to get as many of those frequencies as you can. And if you're like me, where I've had multiple chronic diseases because I did what doctors do. I'm a doctor, medical doctor, and I was in the hospital. I was in fake light. I was using computers and electronic medical record, and I would watch TV, like most Americans do. I wore contact lenses, so I never, ever got the sunlight in my eyes for 20 years. Well, that cost me. I'm so lucky I didn't die 10 years ago when this kind of what hit the fan 10 years ago. So that's why I had to do radical things to not die, basically, and to reverse my conditions, which I was able to do. But I want to keep that. So I try to be in the sun 5-6 hours a day. Okay, not everyone's able to do that. I realize not everyone's able to set up their office outside, but it's kind of a hint that the more the better. Now, if you're young and healthy, I survived till I was 58 before I broke down and collapsed. So, I think we're all different. As Howard mentioned, everyone's different. You really have to individualize all these little steps. And some people need 6 hours. Some people need to go to the equator because even 6 hours of where they live, maybe the sun is just too weak to reverse something that they have. And that's what we can tell our health coaching clients is, best suggestion is find a place at the equator. And obviously not too many people bite on that.
Yeah, the other thing too about the sun is if you think about your ancestry and where they're from, if they are from closer to the equator, like from Central America or from Africa, and their skin is darker, they're going to need more sun. So those people are really plagued by this indoor culture. They need so much more sun. So maybe someone who's from Northern Europe isn't going to be as hindered by being inside because where their ancestry is from, there wasn't a whole lot of sun to begin with. That's why their skin's more transparent. So these are all things you have to kind of work out. And that also, involves where you live currently. So making sure that all these things are dialed in, there's a lot of different levers that we need to maneuver in order to have this kind of perfect plan for you. These recommendations are things you should start doing no matter what. But if you really want that individual specification of each thing, we can do that too. But before we talk about that, let's move on to the final recommendation. This is number 10. And this is to do what we call mindful exercise, which essentially means exercise according to your current health and energy level. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So yes, exercise, health gurus out there using exercise as a panacea for a lot of things like, hey, this is like one of the first things that's recommended. Start an exercise program. You're overweight, start an exercise program. Depressed, start an exercise program. Well, if your cells aren't making good energy, like your mitochondria are full of deuterium or you not getting enough sunlight, then exercise is another stress on the system. So it might be the exact wrong thing to do initially. So we don't emphasize exercise until we're sure you're ready for it. One of the ways to tell you're ready for it is, you're chomping at the bit to exercise because you have so much energy and you're, so full of vibrant energy that you want to go out and exercise. So exercise is something that's usually down on the list of what we want you to focus on. Now, what we do want you to focus on is what I would say is functional movement. So think of our ancestors going through a range of motion for all the major joints. That's important. So something like yoga postures or a stretching program, that would be a good way to start out for those with low energy. Now, if you have higher energy and you're feeling good, then we want to build our endurance, and we do that through longer section activities. And those are things like hiking and biking and They could be things that you do indoors. We really encourage people to exercise outdoors because the sun is such a critical source of energy. You can have more energy for exercise and more energy for health if you do things outdoors. Now, as Howard mentioned, we spend on average 95% of our time indoors, and usually we're not grounded when we're outdoors. We're walking with our synthetic shoes from the car to the building or the car to the house, so we're rarely outside. So we try to encourage our health coaching clients to do at least part of their exercise outdoors in nature. So another thing that we want you to do is not just be outdoors, but to connect with nature, to be around trees and grass, or with me, it's cactus and rocks, because I live in Arizona. So we want you to connect with nature during exercise. That's a great time to do it, because if you're indoors working, you're indoors at home much of the day, and that's like most of your day. And then on top of that, you go to a gym that has artificial LED lights and zap yourself. I think exercise can be more of a negative than a positive, even if you're doing the right thing. And it's another hour of artificial light might be shooting yourself in the foot. So we try to encourage a nature connection and thinking to an ancient human being that they might stoop over to go to the bathroom, or squat to go to the bathroom, stoop over to drink from a stream, have to go under a bush because that's where you need to go. All of these different, climbing a tree, pulling yourself up. So all these different natural motions. See, our joints were kind of designed by how they were needed. So our hips allow us to squat, allow us to run. Our shoulders allow us to pull things down and to throw things. And so everything has a design. And if we don't use the movements that it was designed for, they tend to atrophy. So that's why in the United States, we have an explosion of knee replacements, hip replacements, and the latest things to explode are ankle replacements and shoulder replacements. I can tell you at age 66, if you can do this, your joints will be fine. I don't have any joint problems. And it's through the last 10 years really focusing on this and doing the other things, doing all of the things before the exercise. The sun, mitigating your EMF, the diet, the deuterium, all these things will make your joints more healthy. But it's critical to keep the normal range of motion through doing activities that put you in those extremes of range of motion, so that your body goes, oh yeah, my hip has to, go this far. And you do that in a stretch or a yoga posture.
So yeah, that's number 10. Incorporate functional movement. Don't overdo the exercise. The last thing you want to do is floor the accelerator with an engine that's completely broken. This is something that we see time and time again. People just pushing the exercise, believing that that's going to be the answer to optimal health. And then they end up really sabotaging their results and sometimes even dying because they don't have enough energy for their body to function because they're off burning it at the gym. So think about this logically. If you're low on energy, you need that energy just to keep the engine running. If you're spending that energy and thinking that that's going to help you, it just doesn't work that way. We have to fix the energy production first, doing all of the other things that we mentioned. That's how you get that energy production up. And then once you feel really good and like, I want to go exercise because it sounds fun, that's when it's time to increase the intensity if you want to. So these are 10 things. Go start implementing these. Make sure you save this video too, because I know this is really long. There's a ton of information in here. You're going to want to refer back to this later. So save this video, bookmark it, depending on whether you're on our website, YouTube, or Facebook watching this. Make sure that you pin it for later. Also, if you're someone who you like the information, you like our perspective on achieving abundant health and abundant energy, we do have programs where we can kind of dissect what's going on lifestyle wise for you within your environment. We just look at your health history. We go deep into sleep, diet, fitness, supplements, prescription drugs you're on, etc. So there's a whole lot of that. I'm going to throw a link in the comments section as well as the description if you're interested in just learning more about what those custom programs look like. There's do it yourself, where we just give you a plan after we, formulate and customize your program. We just give you the plan and you go off and do it on your own. We also have coaching if you're someone who wants to work directly with our team to implement a program. And if you're someone who just wants the information, here it is. We're not hiding anything. Go take this, go do your own research too, but most importantly, start implementing this stuff so you can really get that optimal health and energy that you want this year. Is there anything that you want to add, Dad?
No, I think, as I say, this really worked wonders for me. It really gave me a second chance at life where I really, wasn't going to have one. So I stumbled onto this as kind of an accident and serendipitous, but it happened. Now I know everyone needs to know this information. And we've been doing this for 8 years with my patients, and then over the last 3 years with our health coaching clients. So we know this changes people's lives.
Yeah, so again, take this information, implement it. If you want more help from us, go check out that link. And also, we'd like to hear some stuff that you're trying that maybe we didn't include in this 10. Like I said, there's a lot more that we do too. These are kind of our most important 10 things. But if there's something else that maybe we're missing, or you have a different perspective or disagree with our approach, that's totally cool. Leave it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. It's important for us to remain open-minded as well. We're always open to new research and new perspectives. So with that being said, we'll let you guys go. Again, make sure to save this for later if you want to reference it, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.